To a huge win for Manchester United against Chelsea, with manager Erik Ten Hag rejecting talk of a crisis at Old Trafford after a 2-1 victory. Scott McTominay scored twice for United, who are just 3 points behind the champions and their local rivals Manchester City.
It's the crisis.
But it's felt like that.
Not for us. We are in a journey. We keep calm. We look into the process. We know where we have to build. We know where we have to build on. As I say, we're going in the right direction. We don't get distracted from criticism around us, but we are ourselves. We are very critical on ourselves. We know we are not quick, satisfied, and happy. We always want to do better.
And today, I think the result is fair. Yes. No worry, because it's too many circumstances that you need to put why we didn't perform. Because I think to play against Brighton with one less 60 minutes, I think maybe affect a little bit the energy and the performance of the player. And then we need to recover too many players injured, and we need to, to recover as soon as possible to be more competitive and to have different options.
Well, let's start by talking about Manchester United, Pete. They are such a peculiar bunch, aren't they? Because Saturday evening against Newcastle was terrible by pretty much every metric, and it's like a different bunch of blokes turned up last night.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'd go as far as saying that's the most important win Ten Hag has had at Man United. OK, they won the Carabao Cup, didn't they? But they want more than that from him. And I think, if you think of the context, you mentioned that Newcastle game, it was unacceptable performance from United. We then had the reports about the player unrest coming into it. There's this away trip to Liverpool looming, which we know what happened there last season. And of course, you've got Sir Jim Ratcliffe coming in with his investment. He's got to take control of football operations. So what's he going to do? Back Ten Hag or look to start a new era? So Ten Hag really needed something last night. It was going to be a test of whether the players were with him. He brought in Anthony, didn't he? He brought in Amrabat, two players he's worked with a lot earlier in their careers. And those players stepped up for him. Fair play. I mean, that was their best attacking performance of the season by a long, long way. They should have won it much more comfortably. And, they go Bournemouth at home this weekend and play Bayern Munich team in the Champions League who have already qualified from their group, so potential to get a scalp there. And then they go to Liverpool, maybe with a bit more confidence and belief than they might have done if the result had gone the other way last night. As
you said, though, potentially with memories of what happened last season. Pete mentioned there, Mark, that the players might be with Erik Ten Hag. There is certainly one who is. Super Scott to the rescue again.
Yeah, once again, he's the main man at Old Trafford this season, isn't he? Scott McTominay having an incredible campaign. Manchester United continually relying on him. He celebrates his 27th birthday tomorrow. Here's the impact he's having in numbers. And it's not very often you'd see a player like Scott McTominay at the top of the goal-scoring charts for Manchester United. This is the top goal scorers in all competitions this season, ahead of Bruno Fernandes, Rasmus Højlund, Casemiro, Garnacho, Rashford down there on 2, Martial down there on 2 as well. So this tells you the story of Manchester United. They're relying on players that perhaps aren't even the ones that normally get the goals to get them out of trouble. This is the story of the game against Chelsea in terms of the match stats. You can see, obviously, 2-1 the scoreline. The XG, which we'll talk about in a moment's time, was quite significant. 4.17 for Manchester United to Chelsea's 1.52. You can see, once again, 28 shots from Erik Ten Hag's side to Chelsea's 13. On target, 9-3. They didn't have the possession, as you'd expect, the way Mauricio Pochettino likes his sides to play. They want the ball. They had 55% compared to 45%. But once again, dominant in the final third, 12 corners to 4. We talk about the XG. This is important as well, and this is significant for Manchester United, because last night's game, when you look at the entirety of the Premier League this season, was incredibly strong. It was their highest XG this season, second in the entirety of the Premier League against Chelsea. But yeah, Chelsea, Tottenham, 4.12, Brighton, Luton, and you can see the others there, the source Opta. So yeah, really significant in terms of that performance. So I guess, Kwaku, Peter, McTominay was compared to Frank Lampard by Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank last night. That was because of his late runs into the box. Big praise, but certainly deserved at the moment.
We need to hold our horses a little bit.
Says the Chelsea man.
It's tough comparing him to a player who sits 6th in the all-time Premier League top goal-scoring rankings, the only midfielder in the top 20. But McTominay does deserve his credit. He is central to everything good at Manchester United at the moment, and he's scoring important goals both for his club and for his country this season. And he's a different player. He's not being asked to do or receive the ball from the centre-backs. He's being asked to make those late runs into the box and be a goal-scoring threat for Manchester United. And with his physicality, he's doing that very, very well, especially in home games for Manchester United. He needs to continue that. The problem is with Manchester United, and I said it on yesterday's show, is that they are beholden to the performances of individuals. So what happens when Scott McTominay stops scoring goals? Marcus Rashford obviously hasn't scored goals on a consistent basis this season. They're relying on McTominay to get them goals. And what happens when those start to dry up? Can Manchester United show they can score and create chances on a consistent basis when Scott McTominay is not putting the ball in the back of the net? So he needs to continue this, but in the week that's very, very important for Manchester United. It's good that one of their own is getting on the score sheet on a regular basis.
I don't know if you'd thank me for this, but I think Fellaini might be a more accurate comparison.
Yeah.
You know, his player gets in the box, gives defenders absolute nightmares, scores important goals, point-winning goals, match-winning goals for his team. But then, when you look at the build-up play, perhaps hampers the way that Ten Hag might want to play in the longer term, more attractive football. But, you know, Man United need results right now, and McTominay is delivering for them.
You talked about the significance of the next couple of weeks for Erik Ten Hag. The one thing you would say about him is that he's clearly sort of content to fall on his sword. He's not going to shirk any big calls if they need to be made. And it felt as though he almost had no choice but to drop Marcus Rashford and Anthony Martial as well after that defeat against Newcastle.
Yeah, I think there's obviously been a lot of noise around those two players' performances in that match and the commitment they showed on the pitch that night. And yeah, Ten Hag has made tough calls, I think, throughout his tenure. He has, you know, it's a big job that he's walked into there in terms of the amount of off-field issues, the amount of noise around the club. And he's had to take those big calls throughout his tenure. And I think you've got Garnacho now on that left wing. He's brought Anthony back in, as I say, a player he's worked with, a player he trusts and wants in the team, back on the right side. And if Højlund can stay fit through the middle, you look at it and think, where does Rashford actually come back in? When does he come back in? Because particularly on that favoured left side of him, Garnacho's absolutely flying at the moment since that wonderful overhead kick goal, wasn't it? Incredible.
Yeah, and Manchester United just need to be careful they don't buy into this result too much. This is a Chelsea team that are up and down. And it's a Chelsea team that have struggled against different oppositions and haven't beaten Manchester United in a number of years in the Premier League. But this is the foundation, the start for Manchester United to go on and kick on, because Erik Ten Hag's been under a lot of pressure. And yesterday I talked about how he needs to coach his way out of the situation, because these group of players have underperformed for a multitude of managers at Manchester United. We've seen so many good managers come in and out of the club, and so he's going to have to find a way, and he's doing that at the moment in terms of these key and bold decisions of getting out of this poor form, because Manchester United, the expectation at the beginning of the season, especially the season last year, when they finished in the top four and they won the trophy, was for them to kick on, and it hasn't been the case this season.
We heard from his press conference there, he's effectively saying, crisis, what crisis? And you could argue that they're only 3 points behind the champions. The one thing you would say about them, just watching their performances, is that do you have the conviction that at some stage, we know that City can do it or Liverpool can do it, that they're going to win 7 or 8 in a row?
Not to the extent that we've seen City do in recent years to make up the gap. And, you know, you look for improvement for Man United. Well, they finished third last season, but I'd argue that in Liverpool, in Arsenal and in Man City, you've got 3 teams there who are much better than them and who are much more likely to go on those kind of long runs and produce that consistency that you need to be right up there at the top end of the season. You know, I think for United now, they're getting results, they're getting by almost week to week, but as you said, you know, in contrast to that Newcastle performance, the Chelsea one, you know, really, who knows what's going to come up at the weekend from them and when they get to Anfield.
Well, who knows, indeed. And last night, Paul Merson referred to Manchester United as a bag of revels. I think you would say the same about Chelsea, wouldn't you, Mark?
Possibly, yeah. I like revels, they're my favourite.
Good. That's your Christmas present sorted.
Sorted. Yeah, every time Chelsea pick up some results, you think they've turned a corner, they turn back again. Here's their last 6 games, and you can see one thing there, inconsistent. Obviously, the defeat to Manchester United last night. They beat Brighton at home 3-2, lost away at Newcastle 4-1. They can't say they're not entertaining at the moment, that's for sure. Obviously, the 4-4 draw with Manchester City, some describing it one of the greatest Premier League games we've ever seen. They won away at Tottenham 4-1 and then lost to Brentford. So, yeah, we know this is a new era at Chelsea, the start of a new project and, of course, a new manager. But you get the feeling that the inconsistencies are becoming a source of frustration for the fans. Up next, Everton away.
Excuse me. Which, after the recent away games where they've not played brilliantly at Newcastle, at Manchester United, you say that is a concern. The other thing you would say a concern, Kwaku, is ruthlessness in front of goal, which is not a new conversation about Chelsea, but it sort of reared its ugly head again last night.
It did, and obviously previous to the game against Manchester United, Chelsea were finding the back of the net on a regular basis, but there wasn't any bankers there. In the game against Brighton, Levi Cole got on the score sheet, Enzo Fernandez bagged his first 2 goals in his Premier League career. And so you look at the player like Nicholas Jackson, who has scored 6 league goals this season. He's not guaranteed to score a goal in every game. And when he was through on goal a couple of times last night, there was no conviction there. And that's Chelsea's biggest issues. They're losing the battles in both boxes, whether it's their defensive duels in their own box or taking their chances in the opposition's box. That's been a big issue for Chelsea for a number of years. And until they address those issues by bringing in a player that can find the back of the net and make the number 9 shirt his own, then Chelsea are going to continue to struggle because there's no consistency there with their top players.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Christopher Nkunku now, isn't there, to come in and hit the ground running. He looked really bright in pre-season, struck up a good partnership with Jackson as well in pre-season, didn't he? But he's obviously been laid off with that injury. He's almost on the verge of coming back now. I think Pochettino was hoping to have him back for last night, but he's not quite ready. So a big pressure already on him, and we've not seen him yet in a Chelsea shirt in the Premier League.
And they're 10th with 7 points behind Newcastle in 7th, which is generally where European football goes down to. Do you have any confidence in saying that Chelsea aren't going to have a second season without European football?
It's difficult. You look at the top teams in this country and it looks pretty set in stone, and obviously the emergence of teams like Aston Villa, and you look at teams, even though Chelsea beat Brighton last week, Brighton are going to be in and around as well come the end of the season. It's going to be difficult for Chelsea to break into any sort of European places, especially if you look at performances like last night. Pochettino just has to try and find consistency, and hopefully if Nkunku comes back for Chelsea's sake, he can find the back of the net on a regular basis. But on the basis of that performance against Manchester United at Old Trafford, it's not been impressive for Chelsea so far.